I slammed the carving knife down on the cutting board. The sound cracked through the kitchen louder than the music, louder than the chatter spilling from the dining room. My hands shook once, then went still. I kept slicing the roasted turkey as if nothing had happened. But I had heard him. Everyone had. David's voice had cut the room in half. If you want to live here, start paying rent like everyone else or leave. 22 people fell silent. Chairs stopped. Forks froze mid-air. Even the string lights seemed to dim. I didn't look up from the serving platter. I didn't give him the satisfaction of meeting my eyes. I just tightened my grip on the knife. Mara laughed, the soft, cruel kind. "Let's see you survive alone," she said, sipping her wine. I could hear her smirk. I placed the last pieces of turkey on the tray, wiped my hands on my apron, and walked out of the dining room before anyone could pretend to defend me. The faces around the table blurred into one long expression of embarrassment, not for what David said, but because I was the one being humiliated. They thought I'd cry. They thought I'd argue. They didn't know me. The kitchen felt colder than usual. Maybe it was the shock, or maybe it was just the truth finally settling on my shoulders. I leaned on the counter, breathing slowly, listening to the muffled return of conversation and forced laughter. My son had told me to pay rent. In my own home. I opened the cabinet where Mara had moved my coffee mugs weeks ago, pushed aside the ones she bought white porcelain with gold rims, and found my old one tucked behind them. The brown ceramic was chipped on the handle. I poured myself a small cup from the pot I made earlier. It had gone lukewarm, but I drank it anyway. The bitterness helped me stand. Through the open doorway, I heard David bragging again, picking up exactly where he left off before he humiliated me. He talked about his design job, the clients he impressed, the money he thought he made. Guests nodded along like his audience. The room he was showing off belonged to me. The furniture, the artwork, the mortgage-free penthouse. Every chair he sat on mine. But he didn't know. Mara didn't know. No one at that table knew. I stayed in the kitchen, refilled the wine, brought out the bread, cleared plates before anyone asked. That's how they preferred me, silent, in motion, invisible. When I returned to the counter, I caught my reflection on the black oven door, a woman with tied-back hair, hands, slightly trembling face, steady. I stared at her. She stared right back. I whispered, "Enough." No one heard it, but I did. I untied my apron and folded it neatly, slipped it onto the counter and smoothed its wrinkles with my palm. My chest tightened, not from sadness. No, that feeling had burned out long ago. This was something else, something sharper, a quiet recognition. I stepped out of the kitchen and walked straight down the hall, past the laughter, past the light, past the people who pretended not to see me leave. Inside the guest room, I locked the door. The sound clicked softly. Final. I leaned back against the wall, exhaled, and felt the weight in my chest settle into place. I wasn't leaving because David told me to. I was leaving the table because something inside me had shifted, something I had kept buried for too long. I crossed the room, opened the nightstand drawer, and slid out the envelope with my name on it. The corners were worn, the flap still sealed. My husband's handwriting stared back at me. I held it in my hands, feeling the paper pulse with the truth I had ignored. It was time to remember what was mine. I sat on the edge of the bed and placed the envelope beside me, letting the presence of it steady my breath as I prepared for what the night would bring next. I slammed the door shut and locked it. One turn, one click, one line drawn. The room was cold, the smallest in the penthouse. A guest room, technically, but no one ever stayed in it. Mara used it for storage, folded linens, a treadmill no one used. It smelled faintly of lavender spray and dust. I cleared a spot on the bed and sat down. My knees ached. I pulled the Afghan over my lap, one I crocheted the year my husband passed. The threads had loosened near the edge, but it held. No one knocked. No one called my name. Not David. Not Mara. The party went on. Their music thumped through the walls. I heard Forks Glass's laughter. It rose and fell like nothing had happened. I had been erased so easily it shocked even me. Years collapsed into minutes. I was back to being unseen, disposable. But I wasn't. I stood, crossed the room, opened the second drawer in the desk back corner under the treadmill. The key was taped to the bottom where Mara would never think to clean. I unlocked the metal box, pulled out the thick blue folder. The label still read, Ruth Cadell, Private Holdings. I sat back down, opened it. Page 1, bank statements. Savings untouched since Robert died. Page 2, trust certificates. 3, 4, 5 real estate records. Rental agreements, insurance, emergency account balances, all still active. Page 7, stopped me cold. Property deed, 2711 Windsor Terrace Unit, 42B owner, Ruth Cadell, filed June 12, 1997, updated April 3, 2021. No joint ownership, no cosign, no transfer. It was mine. The penthouse David had bragged about. The one he and Mara claimed as their own. The one I had furnished, refinanced, and held through the 2008 crash. The same home where I raised him, fed him, and let him return after every failure. Still mine. Still under my name. Still under my power. I leaned back against the headboard and closed my eyes. Not with relief, but with calculation. They thought they had leverage. They thought humiliation would scare me into compliance. They thought wrong. The folder sat heavy in my lap. Not just paper-proof. I could end this any time I wanted. But I wouldn't, not yet. Let them climb higher. Let them think they've won. Let them forget who handed them the ladder. I closed the folder and placed it beneath the bed, relocked the drawer, slid the key back into its hiding spot. Then I turned off the light and lay back down. Sleep didn't come easily. My mind looped the moment again and again, David's voice, Mara's laugh, the silence around the table. My own feet walking away, steady and slow. They thought they were done with me, but I was just getting started. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the laughter through the walls fade into static. Then I turned on my side, tucked the quilt under my chin, and waited for morning. I yanked open the front door before David could finish his sentence. The hallway was quiet, just polished floors and stale air. I walked straight to the mailbox panel near the elevator. My name was gone. The little white label, Ruth Cadell, had been peeled off. In its place, D&M Cadell, clean, typed, centered. A cheap label maker. A permanent choice. I didn't touch it. I just stared. They didn't say a word about it last night. No explanation. No apology. Just an erasure. I went back inside. Mara stood in the kitchen in silk shorts and a sweater that didn't belong to her. Her hair was pulled up, and she was already sipping from the last mug that used to be mine. She saw me and smiled. I was thinking, she said, tapping on her phone. If we clear out the guest room, I could list it on Airbnb. Cute little listing, great views, good location. No fuss. I didn't answer. Unless you still need it, she added, biting her nail with mock concern. She waited. I walked past her, into the kitchen, opened the cabinet where I kept the coffee. Empty. I moved to the counter. My machine gone. Not stored. Gone. The grinder too. The small tin of beans I kept behind the spice rack was missing. All of it. Mara walked up behind me. "Oh," she said. David thought the kitchen looked too cluttered. "Don't worry, we're ordering a sleek new espresso thing." I didn't look at her. I opened the fridge to grab milk, only almond and oat. No creamer. No labels I recognized. They hadn't just removed my name. They were erasing my life. I walked to the thermostat. Pressed the screen. Nothing. A small lock icon blinked in the corner. Code protected. They had locked the heat. In December. I turned to David's office. He was inside, headphones on video call running. I knocked once. He looked up, paused the call. Problem, he asked like a manager checking on a stubborn employee. My name's off the mailbox. He blinked. Oh, yeah. Mara handled it. Just easier that way. People get confused. I'm not people, I said. He didn't answer. And the thermostat. He exhaled. The bill's getting high, Mom. I stared at him. Look, he said. Standing, you're still welcome here. Obviously. Just work with us, okay? You've had a long run in this place. Things shift. People change. I walked out before he finished. Back in the guest room, I closed the door, pulled on a thicker sweater, and sat on the bed. The air was cold. My fingers stiff. I thought about all the ways a person could disappear. One laugh, one label, one locked setting at a time. They were testing how far they could push me, how much they could take before I pushed back. They assumed I wouldn't, that I couldn't. I opened the drawer again, pulled out the folder. This time, I marked the page with the deed and slipped it into a new envelope. Then I pulled out my phone and typed one name, Howard Greer. I hadn't spoken to him since the funeral, but I remembered his number. The phone rang twice before it connected. I opened the door and smelled bacon. Voices floated from the dining area. Chairs scraped. Dishes clinked. David laughed loudly, too loudly. I stood in the hallway, unseen, unheard. No one had knocked. No one had called my name. No one told me there'd be brunch. I moved quietly down the hallway. From the corner of the living room, I watched them eat. Mara passed around a platter of pancakes. Her mother sat at the head of the table wearing one of my old shawls. Her father poured syrup over a slice of ham like he belonged here. David refilled their glasses. My chair was gone. Literally gone. Not just unseated, removed. A gap in the spacing, like the table had always had room for 6, not 7. I stepped back, let my shadow stay behind. But my ears didn't. She's not exactly easy to live with, Mara said, stabbing her fork into the eggs. Old people never are, her mother replied. They think presence equals permission. I'm just saying, Mara continued. This was supposed to be our home, our space. She's still acting like it's hers. David didn't speak at first. Then with a dry chuckle, he said, She was lucky Dad married her in the first place. Someone whistled, laughed. A toast was made. I walked back toward the guest room, closed the door behind me, sat on the bed, hands in my lap. It didn't sting the way it should have. It registered differently, like someone tapping the last nail into a box already sealed. They weren't trying to drive me out anymore. They thought they already had. I opened the drawer again, pulled out the envelope I'd prepared, the one with the deed copy and statement summaries. I added a sticky note, ready when needed. Then I folded it, slid it into my purse, and zipped it shut. I'd already called Mr. Greer. We had a meeting scheduled for Tuesday morning. Quiet coffee shop, neutral ground. My silence hadn't been grace. It had been gathering, watching, listening. I had spent the last few years shrinking in their eyes, letting them believe I'd grown dull, tired, slow. But the truth was, I had more power now than I'd ever had when Robert was alive. And for the first time, I was ready to use it. I stood, adjusted my sweater, stepped out into the hall again. The table was still full of voices and plates and smiles not meant for me, so I walked past it, out the door, down the elevator, into the morning cold. I slid the safe from beneath the floorboard and spun the dial. Right, left, left, right. Click. Inside the papers were where I'd left them. Insurance, bonds, the title to Robert's old truck, a copy of his will with his scrawled notes in the margins. And then I saw it. A red envelope. Thick. Still sealed. No stamp. No creases. My breath caught before I even touched it. Ruth. For use only if they turn against you. His handwriting. Firm, clear. My name underlined once. I sat on the floor, legs folded beneath me, the metal cold against my skin. My fingers hovered over the flap. Just press? Just tear? Just read? But I didn't. Not yet. I held the envelope, weighing its contents without opening it. Something in me hesitated, not from fear, but from something deeper. Reverence. Timing. Robert never spoke in riddles. He believed in order, in clarity. If he left this, it meant he knew on some level that the day might come when I'd need it. I traced the edge with my thumb, then placed it beside my mug on the nightstand. Steam curled from my coffee. The bitterness calmed me. I sat back on the bed. The envelope glowed like a warning, or a torch. They thought I was powerless. They didn't know what Robert had left behind. They didn't know what I still held. I sipped the coffee, slowly letting the moment stretch, letting the envelope stay sealed a little longer. Not out of doubt, but because once I opened it, there would be no going back. I walked into the credit union with a folder under one arm, and my name still on the deed. The woman at the desk, Nina, her badge red, greeted me kindly. She offered coffee. I declined. My own was still in my system, sharp and bitter the way I liked it. I didn't come here for comfort. I just want a full printout, I said. Checking savings, anything tied to my name. Last 12 months. Nina smiled, tapped a few keys, then paused. Her eyes narrowed. That's a lot of activity, she said. I leaned in. Show me. She turned the screen gently toward me. Flights to Cancun, a resort in Aspen, designer bags, a $6,500 charge to an interior decorator, furniture for a second property in Boca Raton, wire transfers to an account with Mara's maiden name, 4 recurring Venmo payments labeled Mara's family reimbursement, and then $18,000 labeled down payment, apt Sugar 9F, Fullerton EST. I didn't blink. I asked her to print every page. When the printer finally stopped humming, I had 38 sheets of paper. I thanked Nina, declined the survey, walked out with the stack pressed against my chest like a shield. Back in my room, I spread the pages on the bed. They had used my name, my credit, my patience. Mara's parents had no job, no savings, no business being approved for a condo unless someone else had guaranteed it. And that someone had been me. I looked again at the printout, tracing the timeline. It started small. Little things, subscriptions, groceries, upgraded wine. Then the plane tickets, the designer heels, spa retreats. Then came the move to real estate. They hadn't taken a sudden leap. They had crawled over me slowly. And I'd let them. I reached into my drawer, pulled out the red envelope, and laid it gently atop the transaction pages. Then I picked up my phone, scrolled to Mr. Greer's number, and hit call. I uncorked the wine myself. Mara handed me the bottle and said, "Would you mind with that tone she used, sweet on the surface, sharp underneath?" I didn't bother answering. I just poured. 12 women circled the living room. Neighbors. Women from her Pilates class. A few from the co-op board, all dressed like they were auditioning for the same part, rich, effortless, uninterested. I handed out glasses. Not one of them made eye contact. Mara twirled around me like a hostess in a magazine spread. "Isn't this space just perfect for entertaining?" she beamed. My rug under their feet, my lamp in the corner, my painting. Robert's last gift now hung above the fireplace with a new frame. I stepped back and watched. They laughed easily, gossiped, toasted to whatever people liked them toast to. One woman pointed toward me. Mara turned, smiled. "Oh, that's Ruth," she said. "She lives here, kind of like extended family. You know, helping out." Helping out? A few raised their brows. One whispered something behind a glass of rosé. I went back to the kitchen. A few minutes later, someone slid their empty into the sink and asked, "Do you have any more crackers?" Not please. Not thank you. Just the expectation that I was part of the service. I wiped the counter, checked the oven, breathed slow. At one point, I heard Mara joke, "I keep telling David we should hire someone, but why bother when she's already here?" They laughed. So did Mara. I didn't. By the end of the night, no one had spoken to me directly, not even to say goodbye. After the door closed and the noise faded, Mara walked past me and dropped her empty glass in the sink. "Thanks for helping out," she said without looking. Then she disappeared into the bedroom. I stood alone in the kitchen, the stem of a broken glass still in the drain red wine, staining the sponge. The silence didn't hurt. It settled. They didn't need to scream to make me disappear. They were erasing me with good lighting, soft voices, and empty thank yous. I walked down the hall to my room, closed the door, picked up the folder. Then I turned to my laptop and opened a fresh document. One by one, I began typing out every transaction from the printout. Line by line, name by name. Let them toast. Let them laugh. I was building something quieter. I slid the folder across the table. Mr. Greer adjusted his glasses, opened it, and started flipping through the pages. His eyes moved quickly. His mouth didn't. The cafe was quiet. No music, just the low hum of conversation and the soft hiss of steamed milk. We sat near the back, far from curious eyes, my back to the wall, his briefcase by his feet. When he finished, he looked up. "You waited long." I had to be sure I said. "They wanted me out." He nodded, calm as ever, and the envelope, I pulled it from my purse and laid it on the table. Still sealed. Red as the day Robert handed it to me. He didn't touch it. "You want to open it here?" "Not yet." He reached into his case, pulled out a thin folder, and opened it. This, he said, tapping the first page, is the transfer retraction. "You're still the sole owner, but we'll reinforce that with a new title copy notarized. I've already filed the freeze order on the joint accounts under suspicion of unauthorized use." I nodded. He flipped the page. "This is the letter of intent. It doesn't trigger anything, not yet, but it's your official statement of intent to evict and reclaim full control. Once it's signed, I can act fast when you say so." I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake. I signed my name like I used to sign checks for payroll contracts, union fees, not slow, not hesitant. Page 1, page 2, a third for the record. He slid them into a fresh envelope and tapped it shut. "They'll be notified only when you're ready," he said. I sipped my coffee. It was strong. No cream, no sugar. Just how I liked it. Outside, snow fell. Inside, everything moved slowly, but surely. "They think I'm nothing, now," I said. He smiled. "Then you're exactly where you need to be." I folded the receipt copy, tucked it into my bag, and reached for the red envelope. Still sealed. Still waiting. Let them laugh over wine. I had just signed the first piece of my return. I printed everything. Page after page fed through the machine in my corner of the room line. Items, dates, merchant names, account numbers. Red ink for every charge that wasn't mine. Yellow highlighter for each one tied to Mara or her parents. 10 pages, 15, 32. I labeled them, filed them, then pulled out a notebook and started mapping it by hand, cross-referencing dates with emails, bank alerts, voice notes. The paper didn't lie, but I needed more. I bought the camera online, overnight shipping, motion triggered. Small enough to nest between 2 hardcover books on the hallway shelf. I waited until they left for brunch. Then I set it up, angled it just outside the living room facing the hall, where they always walked past, always assumed no one was listening. It didn't take long. 2 nights later, Mara stood by the bookshelf laughing into her phone. "She's just a walking bank," she said. "I don't even ask anymore. I just put it on the card." Silence. Then a snort. David said, "We'll deal with her when the condo's done." Honestly, if she died tomorrow, we'd still have to clean out her room before we rent it. She laughed again. I paused the playback, rewound, played it 3 times, saved it, backed it up twice. Proof. No more hearsay. No more guessing. No more pretending I'd misunderstood. They weren't careless. They were confident. Confident I wouldn't fight back. Confident I didn't know what I had. I printed the transcript, labeled it, and slid it into the folder next to the deed. Then I opened the drawer and broke the seal on the red envelope. I tore the flap. The red paper split clean like it had been waiting. I pulled out a single folded document, thick parchment, Robert's signature at the bottom. His writing, in black ink across the top margin. If they humiliate you publicly, use this. Don't warn them. Just act. I read the first paragraph. Then again, slower. It was a clause, silent, buried in the final draft of his will. Not in the copy they received. Not in the one David had reviewed. Any direct heir spouse or trustee who deliberately humiliates Ruth Cadell in a public or family setting forfeits their right to financial inheritance assets and claim to shared property. Effective immediately upon verified incident. My hands stilled. My eyes didn't. He'd left it for me, quietly, without announcement, without fanfare. Robert knew them better than I did. I called Mr. Greer. He picked up fast. I opened it, I said. Is it dated? Yes, and notarized. Then it's enforceable, he said, even without prior knowledge on their end. They signed the base will. This clause exists inside its framework. We can trigger it retroactively. What do you need from me, witness? Documentation. I have both. He was quiet for a beat. Then, you want to pull it now? Not yet. I ran my fingers along the edge of the paper. It felt heavier than anything I'd held all year. Not because of the ink, but because of what it meant. They thought they had taken everything. Stripped me down to nothing but tolerance. But they didn't know that one dinner, one command in front of 22 people cost them millions. I placed the clause beside the transcript. The bank printouts the footage. Then I zipped the folder shut. They'd made their move. Now it was my turn. I logged in, transferred every cent. Checking to savings to the new account Mr. Greer helped me set up, independent, firewalled, inaccessible, without in-person ID. I closed the joint card, froze the line of credit, flagged the old account for suspicious third-party activity. Next, I scanned the documents. All of them. The red clause. The transaction records, the transcript of Mara's words. I encrypted the folder, uploaded it to the shared drive Greer gave me, and sent him the link. He confirmed receipt within minutes. This is more than enough, he wrote. You give the word, I file everything. I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I picked up the phone and called the property assessor's office, requested a formal audit of the home, full ownership, tax status, historical title, current occupant rights. Just routine, I said when the woman on the line asked. I hung up, sat still, breathed slow. Then I called a locksmith. I didn't say much. Just asked for a full set of new locks, front, back, interior, office, and safe. He asked if someone had broken in. I said no. I didn't need to explain that sometimes the break-in doesn't come through the door. It comes through the people you once trusted with a key. The next morning, I made coffee. Black. Hot. I drank it at the table no one had invited me to sit at. The silence wasn't empty now, it was space clearing itself. They still thought I was furniture. A faded figure in the corner. But I had moved the money, locked the doors, and changed the terms. By the time they noticed, I wouldn't need to raise my voice. Mara slapped a letter on the counter. January 1st, she said. That's your deadline. I didn't move. David leaned against the fridge arms, crossed like he was posing for an ad in a magazine no one reads. We've been generous, he added. You're lucky we let you stay this long. I nodded, slowly. You're right. Mara blinked. What I said, thank you, I replied, setting down my coffee. You've been clear. That helps. I folded the letter neatly, slid it into my folder. Mara tilted her head. That's it. No tantrum. No, I said. Not today. They looked confused. David started to speak, then stopped. I left them in the kitchen and walked to my room. The smile didn't leave my face. It wasn't theirs to evict me from. Not anymore. And January 1st, that date worked just fine. I set the table, folded the napkins, plated the chicken, mashed the potatoes just how David used to like them when he was 10, warmed the rolls, stirred the green beans with cracked pepper, not salt Mara's preference. They didn't thank me. They walked in 20 minutes late, still laughing from something in the car. Mara kicked off her heels in the doorway and dropped her bag on the table I'd just polished. David sat, poured himself wine, didn't ask if I wanted any. I smiled, took my seat in the kitchen out of view. From my pocket, I tapped the record button. Mara's voice drifted in. At least she's finally useful. David chuckled. Took long enough. I didn't flinch. I cleared their plates when they finished. Washed everything by hand. Dried every dish. Returned each fork and spoon to its proper drawer. They didn't say goodnight. I didn't need them to. The audio file uploaded within minutes. Clear voices. No static. Labeled. Time-stamped. Stored. I powered off the recorder. Turned off the kitchen light. Tomorrow I'd pack my suitcase. I pulled out the chair. Sat straight. Folded my hands. The rooftop was loud with chatter, laughter, silverware tapping porcelain. One long table stretched under string lights, candles flickering in glass jars. Everyone wore something dark, expensive, polished. I wore navy, the old kind, soft dull. Not to stand out, just to not be noticed. Mara stood up with her glass. David smirked. Let's raise a toast, she said, holding her wine like she was hosting a gala instead of humiliating her husband's mother. To those who give, she said, pausing for effect, without asking for anything, because they have nothing left. A ripple of laughter rolled across the table. Not loud, not cruel, just comfortable. The way people laugh when they believe something is already true. David didn't flinch. He just sipped his drink and smiled like this was normal. I held my glass of water, didn't raise it, didn't lower it, didn't say a word. Not when the second toast came, not when the waiter served dessert, not when Mara leaned toward someone's wife and whispered something with a side glance in my direction. They didn't notice the way I picked up my purse when the check came, or the folder inside it. The night air chilled. The lights flickered once in the wind, and I stood, quiet, full, ready. Tomorrow the locks would change. I passed the eggs, poured juice, sat at the end of the table. 18 people. Laughter, forks scraping plates. Audrey's kid flinging blueberries. Mara beaming like a hostess, not a guest in a house she didn't own. David clinked his glass. Let's take a moment to thank my wife for putting this all together, he said. A round of applause. Mara gave a fake little bow. Then the doorbell rang. Conversation paused. Mara waved toward me. Can you? I stood before she finished the sentence. Walked through the hallway. Opened the front door. A courier stood with a clipboard. Delivery for Ruth Cadell, he said. Signature required. I signed. He handed over a sealed envelope. Heavy. Crisp. I returned to the table. Chatter resumed. David tried to crack a joke. Mara passed more quiche. I stayed standing. I broke the seal. Slid out the letter. Held it up so my voice would carry. Effective immediately, I read the property lease is terminated for David Cadell and Mara Cadell due to breach of verbal conduct and misuse of shared accounts. The deed remains solely in the name of Ruth Cadell. Forks stopped moving. Audrey gasped. One cousin muttered, Wait, what? I looked at David. Then Mara. They stared at me like they didn't understand the language. I set the letter down next to the fruit bowl. Then I sat. Calm, steady, present, because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't their guest. I was the owner. And the locks had already changed. Mara screamed. Not subtle, not theatrical. A full-body, throat-ripping scream that bounced off the hallway walls and shot through the stairwell. David followed behind her, white-faced, holding the letter in one hand and his phone in the other. "Mom, please," he said. This can't be legal." "It is," I said. "You signed your name to everything." Mara shoved open their bedroom door. Stopped. The drawers were emptied, the closet bare, the bed stripped down to its frame. Her suitcases stood at the door, closed, zipped, tagged. "You packed our things," she spat. "No," I said. "The movers did. I hired them Thursday." David opened his mouth, closed it again, looked around like the room might explain itself. Outside, a neighbor stepped onto her balcony with a mug in hand. Another stood behind her watching. "You can't just throw us out," Mara shouted. "You asked for rent," I said. "I'm collecting." David looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in months, maybe years. I didn't look away. "I can give you a week," I added. "But the locks stay changed. I'll let you gather the rest under supervision." Mara lunged toward me. David caught her arm. I turned, walked away, down the hall, into my room, shut the door, and exhaled. Greer pressed play. The room was quiet, just me, him, and the notary at the long conference table. No interruptions. No excuses. Mara's voice spilled through the speaker. "At least she's finally useful." Then David's laugh. Then silence. Then the rooftop toast. "To those who give without asking for anything, because they have nothing left." The notary didn't flinch. She wrote everything down. Greer didn't pause. He opened the folder, read the clause aloud, clear and steady. "Any direct heir who humiliates Ruth Cadell in a public setting forfeits their claim." He slid me a new sheet, already notarized. My initials already printed, a signature box at the bottom. "Do you wish to enforce this clause?" he asked. "Yes." He stamped the papers, dated them, slid copies into the folder. Mara's shares gone. David's inheritance revoked. Their future rights to the house, the trust, the accounts dissolved. No need to yell, no need to argue. Just press play, sign, seal, done. I stood, collected my coat, picked up the original clause. I didn't need to hear it again, but I would carry it with me. I turned off the ringer. 5 missed calls, 9 texts, 2 voicemails from David, 1 from Mara, 3 from numbers I didn't save. I read each message once. "We didn't mean it like that. We were stressed. You took it too far. We're family." No apology, just panic. I didn't reply. I opened my desk drawer, took out the checkbook, wrote the amount clean, no round numbers. Specific, intentional, 18 or 460. The balance of what was left from the family account. The one David thought was his. In the memo, I wrote, "For the community garden in Robert's name." I sealed the envelope, walked it to the mailbox myself, raised the red flag, then went back inside, made coffee, and sat by the window. The phone lit up again. I didn't touch it. I signed the final line. The notary nodded. "Congratulations." The deed slid into the envelope. Stamped. Sealed. I stepped outside the small county office. No cameras, no audience, just air, just wind, just me. The lake cabin sat 20 miles out, tucked past a row of pines where no one visited unless they meant to. 1 story, 2 rooms, a porch swing that creaked when the wind changed. The realtor left the key on the table with a note. "Enjoy your peace." I walked the floorboards, ran my hand across the empty counters, pulled the curtains back. Light poured in. No echo of voices. No footsteps overhead. No tension bleeding through the walls. just quiet. In my bag, I felt the old mailbox key. I held it for a moment, then opened a drawer, dropped it inside, shut it, and went to make coffee. I opened the door, stepped out barefoot. The boards creaked under me. Cold morning air brushed my arms. The lake barely moved. I held the mug with both hands. The words faced outward, still here. I took a sip. Strong, quiet. Enough. The porch swing rocked gently on its own. Behind me, the phone rang. It rang again. I didn't move. A bird landed on the rail, tilted its head, flew off. I watched the trees shift with the breeze, watched the sky brighten inch by inch. Another ring, then silence. I set the mug down beside me, leaned back, and breathed.